Hello friends, I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. And if it isn't obvious to you, I have been playing Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom now for a few days. And I have thoughts. I don't necessarily have thoughts that I want to... This isn't a review, but it's going to be hard for me to talk about what I want to talk about without talking about Tears of the Kingdom. So I will tell you that it hasn't been what I expected, and I'm thinking that possibly the series might not be for me anymore. And there's a simple reason why. So, The Legend of Zelda released in North America in August of '87. I was 8 years old, and I was not allowed to have a Nintendo. It was against the rules. It was also, I think, a rule because my parents couldn't afford a Nintendo. I remember when they came out, they were like $200, but around here, when they were selling for like double that, like $400, because I remember thinking that was an outrageous amount of money. It's still an outrageous amount of money. But I wasn't allowed to have one, and my friends had them. So if I wanted to play a Nintendo, I had to go to a friend's house. And all of my friends had them. Not all of them, but most of my friends had them. They were allowed to have them. And we would play a lot of things like I sit and watch you play. So I would sit and watch them play Mario. I would sit and watch them play whatever. Wrestling, I remember WWF, the WWF game was really big, and we played it a lot. That was a good play together kind of game. Punch Out, Tecmo Bowl, all that sorts of stuff. But all of my friends also had The Legend of Zelda, and to them, The Legend of Zelda was boring. It was something different that they didn't really enjoy playing, so they never really, played through it. And so I asked if I could play it. They said yes, and I put the cartridge in. This was probably, I don't know that this happened in '87. It was probably closer to '89, '90. I was probably 9 or 10 years old, but I remember turning that game on for the first time and just being like, oh my gosh, this is everything I've ever wanted, I was a fantasy kid. I had already read The Hobbit by this point and was working through Lord of the Rings, and I was like, man, this is a fantasy world. I'm this swordsman. I'm going to go out and save the princess. And it was a very simple RPG. You had some hearts, you had the Triforce, and you gained new heart containers. You could get a fairy bottle. You could get some cool weapons that gave you that unlocked new areas. That was always badass. And I can remember taking a graph paper notebook to my friend's house, and I mapped the entire Hyrule world. I mapped every location of everything because, depending on where I was at, which friend's house I was at, I needed to remember where it might be months before I get to play the game again. So I get to play the game for a couple hours while they're asleep. I map everything. I take my book home with me. There was no internet at this time. There was no way for me to just ask other people, how do I find this? How do I find that? I had to do it all myself, and I did, and I mapped the whole thing. There was Nintendo Life, I think it was called, or Nintendo Power, the magazine. Of course, I wasn't allowed to have that. That was a subscription service, and you could get guides. You could get gameplay guides that would tell you all this stuff that I've mapped out myself. But ever since then, The Legend of Zelda has been the reason I've been exclusively Nintendo-ish. My kids have other systems, but I've personally only ever owned Nintendo products. In one busted Sega Genesis that only had one controller port and NHL 95. I did play the hell out of that. Anyway, The Legend of Zelda has been this franchise that I've loved my entire life because of the discovery, because of interesting gameplay mechanics, because of the setting. I absolutely love the setting. But as I've been playing through Tears of the Kingdom, I'm not exactly enamored with it. I'm not. It's okay. I'm enjoying myself. But I'm not finding myself to be mesmerized like I have been with previous titles. Even Breath of the Wild was pretty amazing. And this feels a lot like Breath of the Wild. There's just more. And I think that's the problem. Is now there's not a way for me to sit and... I guess there is. I could sit and grind through this whole game, but there are so many layers. There's so many recipes and sword combinations and weapon combinations and upgrades for this and upgrades for that. And what do you want a heart? You want stamina? You want this? You want that? There's so much going on, and the world is so like, go figure it out on your own. Like, that it's just not it's not the game that grabbed me as a kid. It's not the game that has grabbed me so many times in my life. I have played all of the mainline games. I skipped a lot of the Game Boy stuff because I was aged out by that point. But I don't know. There's something about the immenseness of it that is making it less like the game that I've been in love with my entire life. The game series I've been in love with. It's too much. And I'm dying a lot. Like, way too much. I'm dying more playing this game than I have. I mean, even a Souls game, I don't think I would die this much. And a lot of it is just the fact that every, here's a button to do this, but hold it to do that, to select this thing, to select that thing. Like, every button has a sub-select menu and so it's just, as I'm fighting and I'm trying to remember what I'm supposed to hit, I'm hitting the wrong buttons and end up getting killed, or I'm diving into the earth because I forget to pull out my paraglider because I'm hitting the dive button. It's been a little bit crazy. I'm enjoying it, but it seems like the series has matured from. I would argue that even in the 80s, maybe the early 90s, there were adult style RPGs that had intricate weapon systems, intricate character systems. The thing about Zelda, Link has always been a very flat, you have hearts, you have containers, you have a couple of inventory slots, let's go. And the simplicity of it has always been something that I've adored because they've made it more about having unique, interesting puzzles that, whatever. Now it seems like you have to figure out all of these combinations and recipes and schematics and whatever so that you can beat the puzzle in a way that wasn't intended. And that's the important part of the game. And I'm just not interested in that. I'm not interested in that at all. I'm interested in neat little logic puzzles and, fighting my way to Zelda. So, I've been enjoying it. I just feel like this series has matured to a point that, unlike, there's the flip side, take like the Pokemon franchise that has never matured. The current game is just as simplistic as the original game. There's really no I don't want to say there's no gameplay. It's a very immature game. It's made for kids. Zelda was made for kids, and even into 64 was still a kids game. It was still like a very simplistic RPG. But over the last, the last few iterations in the series, it has become much more complex and much different from the games that I've loved my whole life. That being said, I'm going to go play more Zelda because, I've been enjoying it, but just not the way that I used to, if that makes any sense. I don't know how else to describe it. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. Let me know if you do in the comments below, and if you've been playing it, let me know what you think. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is ratiocinate. Ratiocinate. A verb meaning to work around the solution of a problem through logical thinking and reason. Ratiocinate? Gosh. Since the dawn of humanity, our best minds have failed to ratiocinate a method of proving God's existence. Somebody say this word for me. Ratiocinate. ratiocinate. No, I'm not going to use that word because it seems ridiculous.